Hello everyone and welcome to the second episode in this mini-series on well-being in the workplace. Thank you so much for joining us today. And today our talk is called the Workplace Wellbeing Strategy. As you know, Talks is an interactive podcast series where we invite experts from the world of digital HR and learning, both regionally and internationally. There are no sales pitches, no death by PowerPoint or product demos, just some great conversations to inform our HR learning and EdTech community. For those of you who have joined us today, please feel free to ask your questions during the session in the comments section and stay around until the end where we can get your feedback from a quick survey. My name is Michael Gledhill and welcome to XpertTalx. So today it's fantastic to get our guest back and obviously by popular demand. So I'm really excited to continue this conversation with you, Bobbi. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well. Great to see you again, and thanks for having me back.
No, great. Like I said, it was interesting that it was a comment poster, but probably somebody that saw it in, when we post after, when we release the podcast to the masses later, and they've made comments about, can we dive kind of deeper into this and, talk more about strategy and get into the weeds of everything. So you've got a great background there. Tell us where you're at the moment.
So since we last spoke, when I was based in Abu Dhabi, I've relocated to Portugal. And I'm currently I suppose, trying the digital nomad life. Today I'm in Nazaré, which is where the largest surfable waves in the world are, and where the World Championship takes place. It's been quite breezy this morning, but we've been watching some incredible surfing, which has been great. And now I'm in a co-working space, which I found on the internet. And so, the digital life so far is working out all right.
Yeah, and that's part of your philosophy, really, to what you talk about is well-being, and I guess that's part of the new life that we lead, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think ultimately for me it was about doing more of what I wanted to be doing, and that was getting out into the countryside and maybe having a little bit more spare time than I had previously. So yeah, I'm trying to gain, I suppose, that common well-being word, a bit more balance in my life, and a bit more adventure, I suppose, and putting myself out of my comfort zone and trying new things, which are also great for your well-being. So yeah, I'm loving it so far, but it's definitely not without its challenges.
Yes, well, that's life. I mean, it wouldn't be the same otherwise, would it? So let's dive in then. So let's start with kind of the big questions. How do we determine a workplace well-being, as a definition anyway? What are we talking about here?
So look, there's a lot of the journey that workplace well-being has gone on has meant that terms like workplace well-being and wellness and things like that are quite loaded with maybe not the most helpful sort of insinuations. So sometimes people will hear you say, I'll say to them, what do you do? I'm a workplace well-being strategist and research. And they go, so you're into yoga and free fruit in the kitchen, and all this kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, but there's quite a lot more to it than that. And I think this kind of misconception around the word well-being being quite sort of soft and fluffy, really where it's moving to is massively more into the strategic space as increasing research becomes available to us, and we discover not just the cost of poor well-being to businesses, but also the benefits that can be gained by being a partner in the well-being of your employee community and even your wider geographic community, and the returns that brings to businesses. So that's really where I specialize and what's really the most interesting area to me. But of course, within that, there's a whole facet of different elements. So, we can be talking about health and sleep and maybe those things we more traditionally think about in terms of well-being, but we also need to be thinking about leadership styles, corporate culture, levels of bureaucracy, flexibility, and those things within a business that create or remove stressors that then have an impact on a person's health and performance in the workplace, so and outside of the workplace even. So yeah, it's bigger than maybe people have historically thought about it.
But there's interest, and I think that's quite, I think that's quite positive, isn't it, moving forward, that there's an interest of what we can do from both sides, as an employer and an employee. So really kind of one of the main questions that we were getting from the feedback was, well, how do you build a plan? What does a plan look like? And then, we'll talk about budget. Let's, show me the money. What are we investing in? How can we even determine what a budget's like, what a plan's like? How do we start, basically? Let's talk to that.
I think this is another really interesting topic, because if we take the well-being piece out of it and just say we're going to create a business strategy that's designed to improve our business performance, that suddenly becomes less worrisome and something we may be more accustomed to. The only thing is, now we're talking about well-being as a strategy. So where we're trying to encourage the maturity of the conversation and therefore the impact that the work takes, is to make this intentionally strategic. The goal is no longer just to make people healthier or try and nudge them along to a healthier journey. It's really about trying to understand what relationship that plays with business success, so that we can all be mutually winning from this and from this investment, and that those measures, and as you say, budget planning is set up so that we can prove return on investment and impact on investment. Where we need to start is where we would start with any strategy, which is where are we wanting to go? What problem is it that we need to solve? What cost savings do we need to make? What are the objective and goals and vision and mission of our wellbeing strategy, or indeed even our corporate strategy? A lot of corporate strategies are now including wellbeing elements. But if you're going just to have a wellbeing strategy, then start with the destination in mind and get some consensus around that, particularly amongst your senior leaders, because they're the ones who are going to be giving you, the buy-in, the support, the budget, etc. And then from there, once you've got your end goal in mind, you need to know where you're starting from, because strategy is a journey, right? So if I'm in position A, but I would like us to get to position B, what are the steps that need to happen in between those 2 points? And how long might that take, etc. We can break a much bigger, ambitious vision down into individual goals and KPIs and targets, exactly the same as any other business strategy. And those targets can be around commercial objectives, so things like reducing staff turnover, reducing absenteeism, improving productivity, improving engagement, and sort of cultural improvements, a general happier, more engaged, innovative feeling in a business. So those things can certainly be measured. And then you've got things like health indicators. So are our employees, getting adequate sleep? Are they doing enough exercise, etc.? And what indicators can we have that those actions are having a positive impact on the individual's health and performance, well-being and performance? So we've got to start with that sort of big picture in mind. We've got to know where we are now, and the best way to know where you are now is to get some data, and that can involve getting data on surveys, getting your staff to comment on things, collect information on their sleeping patterns and their eating habits and all of those kinds of things, so you can see where they might have knowledge gaps or struggling to deal with those challenges. And then you've got the data that might be around their relationships with their manager, their relationship with understanding their position in the business, having clarity around those things, and where's my journey going and how am I doing? Am I achieving, or am I wavering in the midst? So all of these things are things that you can measure through surveying and through other health indicators, which often you can get in the UAE from insurance providers and checkups and things. Now, you're not trying to get that data at an individual level. I'm not interested in how Paul's blood pressure is or how much visceral fat Paul has around his stomach. What I'm interested is how are those coming out as patterns in my employees? Are we seeing high levels of obesity? Are we seeing high levels of smoking? Are we seeing high levels of stress, low levels of sleep, bad relationship with leadership and managers? How do we point to the places where we have risks? And the other thing that I really like to do in my work is to do that at demographic level as well. So you can do it for the whole organization, but sometimes that can send us off a bit down a garden path, and you need to get a bit nicher than that. So how are different factors affecting people with different ages, people with different tenures, people who commute more or less, people who have kids or don't have kids, so there's all sorts of different things you can look at. We do that work ourselves, but there's many ways of doing it. And so you've got to know where you are now. And then once you've got your data on where you are today, you've got your understanding of what's the vision and where do we want to go and how do we want to improve, then you start plotting your map. And that's the planning piece. That's the who do we need? What skills do we need? How much money are we going to need? And that should be all target driven. It should be attributed to objectives. Those objectives should have a value. So if we decrease staff turnover by 5%, how much money does that save the business? We want to try and get some financials around those figures, because that allows us to set a budget. If you can't work out what you're going to get as an investment, or at least, you're never going to get it accurate, but some indicative numbers around your targets, you've no idea how much to invest. And this is where a lot of wellbeing approaches are. And I won't call them strategies, because they're not strategic enough. They're not asking those strategic questions. If I spend X, what will I get back? What impact can I expect for my investment? Where can I expect that impact to show up, and how am I measuring that it is? That often is the piece that's missing. And then the problem when you're not measuring those things is it becomes very, very difficult to work out where you've got gaps, where you could be doing better, where things are trending negatively or positively. It's very difficult to know where to spend your money. It's difficult to find high risk spots that need your immediate attention. And so without this kind of constant stream of data and information helping you to make these decisions, you really not got a strategy, because you can't possibly get where you want to go by just guessing. So that's really important, Paul.
And I guess they would have, I'm trying to think of the people that would kind of reach out to you. They've already identified that they've got some problems. They have additional sickness. They've got a lot of leave. They've got some friction in the business. Essentially, the culture's not where they want it to be. And I think culture we'll talk about in a short while. But I think that But I kind of get the idea that you might find that sometimes there's just a sticking plaster on something, and then they'll go, let's get some bean bags in a room, and I don't know, stick a music room or up to one of those sleep pods, or get I think that they're almost sporadic ideas, aren't they? And they're just like, let's try. Do you find then, again, back to the planning budget, with a lack of strategy, there might just be, just throwing some money at something and again, it may be small things are useful. I mean, what's a better situation, that at least they've identified something, but they haven't got the full picture and they've done something, or they're absolutely clueless and they're shocked. But what is the better scenario that you find?
I suppose when you go into business, even if they're doing everything completely wrong, they're spending money on things that they've been sold, the sexiest, latest, trendy app or whatever. And I'm not saying these things can't be effective, but if you're just buying them because your competitors got them, or because somebody convinced you at an event, there's a lack of strategy around the implementation and the budget spend, but at least there's a desire to make things better. So in that regard, yes, from my perspective as a consultant, I've got to do a bit of undoing of the not so good practice so that we can start moving forward with better practice. And I, do that through training and development. But if you're starting from a place where there's only one or two people in the business going, I think we need well-being, and like everybody else is like, you're just talking to a brick wall. So I would say that it is better to find organizations who've at least made some degree of commitment, even if that first degree of commitment is, I want to engage you to help me get the data so I can see whether we need to be doing something here. I'm curious enough to answer that question, and I'm prepared to invest in understanding that. And that could be driven from a whole host of things that you said. They could have very high staff turnover. They could be struggling at productivity levels. They could be seeing much higher levels of anxiety, stress, and those kind of things. So there'll be indicators, financial and human, that are giving them cause for concern, that left untreated and also undiagnosed, because a lot of the other big problem that we see with people that go into this without the right knowledge and support and experience is that they start just trying to they'll go, oh, we've got lots of smokers, so we're just gonna like put a smoking cessation program in, and it becomes really piecemeal. And what they're not seeing is a return on investment for that, because people forget that system exists. It's not well advertised. It's noise in their day. They ignore the emails, all of that. They don't want to give up smoking, frankly, or whatever the cause is. So you can end up spending a lot of money on these things, but they're so fragmented that the likelihood of you being able to see any kind of meaningful joined up value coming from that is quite low. And the other thing that starts to happen, Paul, is that when organizations take the approach to invest in a plethora of support material, training, whatever it is, apps and the like, but they don't do anything to deal with the stresses that are being created inside their organizations through toxic leadership or overworking or always on email culture, etc. If they're not doing those things and they're asking their employees to go on smoking cessation and obesity training, and there becomes a resentment from employees and saying, why am I having to do all the hard work? This isn't always on me, there's got to be a bit of give and take, and it starts to feel a little bit empty. So and as our general awareness around what is good and what is not good for us, as our employees in general just become so much more aware of these issues, they become really much more expectant and demanding of where that balance of, I'm going to be a great employee and perform and deliver for you, but I'm not going to kill myself doing it. That, I'm not going to make myself sick mentally or physically in the name of this business. There has to be an ambition that our businesses both make money, but they also add incredible value to society. And where better to start with that than your own employees, who you have a degree of connection with already. So it's definitely an area that is maturing. But there are a lot of pitfalls and mistakes that people are making, which means that they are wasting money on the wrong things, and then they're getting resistance when they go and ask for more money because the boss is going, but what I've already given you has made no difference to our metrics whatsoever. And then they'll go, but we can't take it away because we're already offering it, and then we'll get more absenteeism and more, and so they're stuck in a bit of a cycle. With declining budgets and less resources to try and achieve the same things. So this is a long-term problem.
And I guess really just from my own point of view, and I'm always amazed when one of our team is saying, oh, we've been here for 10 years, and I go, what's wrong with you? What is going on, So I literally do ask, well, why have they stayed with us? And I think that kind of communication, oh, well, we've been with you for a long time. It's you've been very fair. You understand, it's like expert learning have had babies and we know everybody's name. And I guess that comes with just, being open to listen to everybody and being open about communication. And I think, it's always hard for me to try and put a finger on culture, but, culture is something that you kind of work towards almost tribally. And perhaps we've got, a business because it's about learning and we're developing thousands of people. And I think everybody, I mean, possibly that's one of the reasons that fundamentally that's why people want to work with us. They believe in our goal, and they believe that they're helping. We can do it online, so we're helping thousands and thousands of people kind of daily to develop and grow. But it's still one of those things that I'm not sure what we're doing. We're doing something right, which is fantastic. And we do tend to have people to stay, but I'm not sure that we know exactly how that's happening.
The magic.
I just think it's kind of it's just kind of an open door policy that we've lived by. But tell me about culture and talk about that and how, we've been blessed by that. By the way, we're 30, 40 people, so it's not like it's as difficult to know everybody's names, their families, and some of their traumas and everything that's happened through their lifetime with us. And we're 20 years old, so maybe it's different for organizations that are larger. But how do you drive a culture of caring and then learning more about the people? Because it sounds to me that the more they learn about the individuals in the organization, the more they can act, react, and all the rest of it. What do you feel about culture and a message through culture?
Oh gosh, there's so much in all of that you've just said. I love the saying, culture is how you feel about going to work on Monday morning on Sunday night. If you dread it, if you just think, oh my word, I've got to do it for another 5 days, 6 days, then you are in the wrong place or the wrong culture. Usually the latter. Similarly, if you are just getting so much out of working with this team, we're innovating, we are learning together, we are feeding off each other's ideas, there's a real sense of camaraderie and as you say, direction and purpose and meaning to the work I'm doing. And by that I mean I'm getting meaning out of why we're doing this, in your case to educate, or you're getting meaning out of the relationships that you're having in pursuit of whatever goal it is. But you can have one without the other and still be very fulfilled, and you can have both, which is the holy grail. So culture is a fascinating thing when it comes to well-being, and it's really important to understand this when you're planning your strategy, because there's something called the social proximity effect, which essentially means that we adopt the behaviors of the people who are closest to us. So if you join a team and everybody in that team is very fit and healthy, they go running at lunchtime, they don't smoke, they enjoy bringing shared food and creating community, they like to go out a couple of times a month for social occasions, they support each other, then you're going to feel a really strong sense of belonging. And even if when you join that team you weren't necessarily a super fit, healthy person, you start to feel like you have to behave like them, and that's driven by our desire to belong. And frankly, there's no stronger sense in the human psyche than to belong. And so the same thing happens on the flip side of well-being. So if you walk into a team of smokers, a team of late night drinkers, a team of people who stay till 10 p.m. and go for 3 whiskeys after work every night, you will, unless you are so single-minded to not do that, you will get pulled into all or an element of that, because again, you don't want to be the strange one that doesn't conform to the social rules that are created in this group that you now belong to. So this is all happening at a subconscious level, but it drives culture. And so when you're planning your strategy and you're looking at like, how do we reduce bad behaviors and how do we increase good behaviors? And by that, I mean in terms of my own health choices, my own sleeping choices, but also how I talk to other employees. How I deliver work. Is it completed so the next person can do their task, or do I hand over a load of rubbish that somebody else has now got to clean up? So there's an element of you choosing how to show up into the environment that you're in, and then there's an element of the environment you're in pulling certain behaviors and traits out of you that you're almost subconsciously not conscious of, subconsciously unaware of. So yeah, so culture is a really important thing, because if you don't in your strategy understand where your risks for negative social proximity, growth of negative behaviors, you won't catch them, and they will grow and they will spread, and that can be just negative water cooler chat, or it can be toxic behaviors between managers. If they go unaddressed, they will breed like mold, basically. But similarly, if you promote and encourage the other healthy behaviors and have advocates for that, they grow. You don't have to buy thousands of apps and bring in yoga instructors. Sure, go for it. And I wouldn't tell you not to do it, but so much can be done in a well-being strategy that's actually just dialing things within the organization itself and creating a healthy workplace that we are invested in. And we become invested in those drives because we feel that we get a lot back in return for what we give. So in return for being a great employee who delivers on time, who's friendly, who helps people out of a sticky spot, when I'm struggling, when I'm in a sticky spot, I'm going to get that back. And that feels comfortable and safe and secure. And it feels like I can be a bit braver with my choices because I'm going to get caught if, I fall or make a mistake. If you work in an environment where it's very heavy-handed, you don't have a lot of autonomy, you're not trusted, the leadership is aggressive, the team are fighting and arguing against each other, that will destroy you. And until somebody breaks that pattern, it grows and becomes the norm. And I
guess there are, organizations where one toxic person, just that might be kind of their behavior, and then it almost becomes accepted to a certain 100%. Extent. And the longer that goes on, the harder it is, to remove that person, because they're so valuable to the organization from a revenue perspective. For example, there might be the top sales guy that's, not treating everybody how they should be doing. And then you kind of start go, well, you know what it's like. And you start making excuses for that. Yeah. So I guess that's it's a fair thing.
A big topic they call, Deloitte, I believe, coined the phrase toxic rock stars.
Okay.
And these are the people you've just described. They show up on your P&L as superstars, as rock stars. Blimey, they've smashed their targets for the year. Look at these extra clients they've brought on, and the numbers are looking great. But they've done significant research into these people, and they found that for every $1 they make a company, they destroy $3 value. So whilst they look like the holy grail of where we need to be, as they're standing on the shoulders and crawling over everybody else to get to the top, those people are performing much lower than their capability. So it does have, and it's such that makes the visual even worse, because suddenly their scores drop and it looks like this guy's or woman's even better than they were before. So you have to. You have to understand that there's a cost to this toxic leadership. And I also, one of the things we've built into our program is guidance for leaders and managers in dealing with well-being related, relational, cultural issues in businesses, because what we've found is that the vast majority of leaders, particularly in the UAE, sort of Middle East region, is a lot of people are promoted because they're good technically at what they do. They're a good salesman, or they're a good engineer, or they're a good nurse, or whatever it is. They are promoted for their technical prowess, not their leadership ability.
Sure.
And so they're left to drown, because they suddenly find themselves in this position where they've been given the promotion and the trust, and they're, they're fluffing their feathers thinking, I'm doing well and I've got a sense of accomplishment. That's really important. Then you land them in a pond with a group of people who just don't have any respect for them or work for them. They just shout at them. They can't get them to do what they need to do. So many leaders now, leaders by name and not by nature. Unfortunately, we have neglected, and this is your area, we've neglected learning and development really in the leadership space, and it has cost us, because leadership and management is now the leading cause of stress in the workplace. And what's even worse is that when surveyed, 84% of managers said they knew they were part of the problem, but didn't know how to navigate the culture of the business without going against these cultural norms that had been created, even though they knew those cultural norms were destructive. And then
it becomes more about some of the softer skills as well, doesn't it?
100%.
The communication skills and the collaboration skills, and the leader as a mentor and coach, and listening is probably, still one of the most popular courses. It's easy, isn't it? And nobody sort of does it. You have to focus. It is a skill. It's it's almost an art to listen. And I think the other thing that I noted that when you were speaking about people feeling good about what they're doing is just to give praise, just to recognize the autonomy of, you've done a great job, and you can run that, you can own that customer or client, and we've got faith in you and trust, and well done. I think that's a massive way of really bringing the teams together. It's interesting.
We underestimate the power of the sense of accomplishment, but we also underestimate the power of what I call vacuous accomplishment. So that's where you haven't actually achieved very much, and you haven't. You've not really stretched yourself. You've not really learned anything. You've delivered a pretty mediocre report, but your manager says, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and you're sitting there thinking, this is rubbish. And then it feels like your leader is just taking the easy route out. They don't want to have those difficult conversations with you. They don't want to give you opportunities to grow and challenge. They're just pacifying you all the time, and that feels rubbish. Nobody wants someone who only criticizes and treads down and all of that, but there has to be tell me what I can be doing better. Tell me where I'm weak and I need to evolve, or tell me where you've seen a skill or an attribute that I have that I can bring out even stronger to help the business or to help the department or whatever. And that sometimes is also sorely missing, that maybe constructive critique of feedback.
Yeah. And you're talking about questions and asking questions from both sides, from employee and employer, and I think that's kind of interesting. So when does it really break? When does it go wrong? When does disaster strike and they're going, Bobbi, come on, we need you desperately now? I mean, is that a case these days? Do you get those calls, emergency calls, get us out of this mess? Or
no, I will be honest, I've never had an emergency call, but I think that's because people understand that with people, all of this stuff takes a while, right? There are no silver bullets. There's no magic switch anybody can turn on, and tomorrow all your employees are happy, healthier, and more engaged than they were yesterday. So, gosh, if there were, I'd be a very rich lady. But so I think people come to you with, look, our numbers are not great. We're losing talent to the competition. Productivity through the floor, whatever. But they understand that whilst the problem is urgent in the sense that it needs solving, that realistically people challenges take a while to solve. It takes a while to change behaviours. It takes a while to implement new systems. It takes a while to get sign off and budget. So yes, there's an emergency element to it, but we're talking about people. We have to do it properly and slowly, not fast and poor. And actually that's another downfall, and probably where does it go wrong is people are trying to do what you say earlier, put plaster over the cracks, quick throw that out there, look like we're doing something, look like we care, look like we've got the same thing in the employee brochure that our competitor has, without any thought or consideration or measurement. And so it becomes a really disengaging topic for people, because it's not a success story. It's not exciting. There's no journey to follow. People want to know if the general health of the working population has gone up. Celebrate it. Tell people that you can prove that that's what's happened, and get them buying into that excitement and that joy. So that's important. The communication piece and that. But where I think a lot of the problem lies, well, two or three issues, I suppose, combined into one, is the first one is that they don't get the buy-in from senior leadership or the board. It happens at the sort of director level of maybe the HR department or the operations department or something, and they're only ever going to have limited success with that, because the leadership set the tone. They do set certain cultural traits in a business. They do decide what's acceptable and unacceptable, what's the price for human health and success and budget and profit making. They have to be there with you in agreement with the mission, because if they're not, wherever there's doubt or resistance, that piece of the business will be isolated from the experience of the whole. And then you don't have culture now, you have pocket culture. And that means that as soon as, for instance, marketing are totally on board with it, they're doing loads of great well-being stuff, that's a team everybody wants to be on. But as soon as they have to interact with finance, the whole thing falls apart, because it's not enjoyable anymore, you know. So that social proximity, if you haven't got it coming all the way through the business, it will disappear. So buy-in from the top is absolutely essential. Having proper measurement, absolutely essential. Having an adequate budget, but one that's been calculated based on target ROI, not just some random figure you've decided that'll do.
Fair enough,
and also the other big area I think is problematic is with personnel, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, there are not that many people who would be adequately qualified to become a chief wellbeing officer of a sizable organization, because it's a relatively new profession and a new area. So finding talent is very hard, which means we typically over promote or just land it in the lap of HR, who may or may not have the skills and expertise and nuances necessary to get this right. And so then they just feel like this is another massive thing I've got to deal with. HR is already massively overladen. In fact, they did some studies recently and found out that HR are the most stressed and most depressed of all departments in businesses, which is no surprise if you think they've just come through COVID. They've sort of re-emerged as this strategic department, which in many ways they never used to be. They're finding their feet in a totally different conversation, and they're being promoted a lot quicker. And so they're already in a very new world. And then they get thrown well-being because, well, where else does it go in the business? And of course, it just doesn't, it's not adequately resourced by the right people or enough people. And so it ends up being this kind of damp squib.
And they don't have the knowledge as well, because like you said, it's still relatively new. I was speaking at an event on AI and talent acquisition with a room full of, 150 HR people that were nervous about AI. And they were, they're already under pressure and thinking that not that AI will be the tool that they need, but AI will be the death of their job. So, there's a mindset shift just on that, to say, well, where do you balance that to say, actually, this could be good for me. If I'm the person that's using the tools, if I'm using AI as part of the recruitment tool, and then you get back to the humanization, and you're talking about culture and some of the questions that you're asking to employers about their culture could even be before they take people on. So, if we're doing that through machines, then maybe we're getting that wrong. So it needs somebody that has the knowledge from that side. But you're right. I think it was an interesting, take on everybody's feelings as a HR professional, especially over the last, a couple of years where, that we're just coming out of the pandemic, which has been massive for everybody. And yeah, there's a lot of plates to spin in the HR world. And, generally they're doing a great job, but they need help. And I think they know that now.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, look, I'm just going to pop into the chat. I'm not sure if there's anybody.
Sure.
We've been chatting away, and I'm kind of.
We have. Hopefully, it's been interesting and useful. Let's see if there's any questions.
Always great. Yeah. So just one on what your thoughts on supporting SMEs in the field, especially where budgets are really tight and staff and it's limited. So I think that's a great question.
Look, I wrote a little post actually just the other day, which was the benefit of being a late adopter in this space, and there are huge benefits. But then there's also the risk of becoming such a late adopter you become a lagger, and that's about the worst place you can be 5 years from now. So the brilliant thing is that in terms of, sure, there is still a cost to doing this, but the cost has come down significantly. A lot of the materials, products, training has commoditized already. It's also more research led than it's ever been before. So the quality of the services, products, consultancy that's now available is higher. So you're kind of benefiting from all that learning that the massive organizations have already done. And there's case studies that one of my favorite case studies is SAP or SAP. They started this strategically in 2009. And they've been going now for nearly 15 years with what they call the Business Culture and Health Index. And they can now prove that for every 1% improvement on their health index, that they make between 90 and 100,000 euros of additional operating profit. But it's taken them nearly 15 years to work that correlation out and to understand that within the unique traits of their organization. An SME is not going to go on a 15-year journey to work this all out, right? So a lot of that knowledge now exists, and those practices and what worked and what didn't has all happened. So we're now into a much healthier space. There is always going to be a challenge of, do you see it as a cost center or do you see it as an investment? And again, this has to come down to strategy. And for SMEs, that strategy is going to sit with a more senior person because the number of people in the organization is so much smaller. So it's likely to sit underwritten by the CEO or the COO. It's even, frankly, the CFO, because the outcome should be financial. So that they should definitely be in the conversation. And then you've got this, I suppose you've got to have this drawdown whereby you are able to start your strategy with that piece I said at the beginning, which is, well, if we reduce staff turnover by X, how much does that save us? If we reduce absenteeism by Y, how much does that save us? If we increase productivity by 3%, what does that gain us? And those targets should be in place so that you can justify your investment, and your investment should only be a small proportion of what you expect to yield, right? So, if you're doing it right, then it should turn out to be an investment. But if you invest in it poorly, it could be what we say in English, throwing good money after bad, because you'll never get it off the ground well enough to yield the return on investment. So, there's definitely an investment choice here. I think the other thing that's really great news for SMEs is there is a massive amount you can be doing yourself without any expertise of somebody like me or any kind of program, because like you indicated at the beginning, Paul, when you work in an organization that's like 10 to 200 people even, it's much easier, even if you don't know every 200 people's name, that a lot of people know a lot of people's names. A lot of people know each other much better. So when you are an SME, you have that much tighter knit community. It's much easier to communicate. It's much easier to bring people together. So your cost of getting out should be cheaper. But again, has to be with the support from the top and intentional and strategic, with some clear measurable goals in place, as you do for any element of your business, back to that strategic mindset.
Sure. Fantastic. Well, look, we're at the end, and it's been fantastic, and appreciate. I know you've spent longer on this session, and you were in demand for that. You know, the people asked and you delivered. So really appreciate that, guys. If you just want to stay on for a couple of minutes just to fill in there's a short survey that Ellie will put in the chat now. Complete the survey. That gives you the opportunity to let us know what more you'd like to hear, whether it's from this particular topic today, or if you're watching this in the future, get in touch with us, or any other topics that you want to learn about or want to know about, or any research that you want us to go through and bring it into XpertTalx. And again, Bobbi, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you. And thank you to your audience for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I've put the FOB server link in the chat, so I would request everyone to fill that.
Yeah, we'll just give it a couple of minutes to stay on then.
Yeah.
Bobbi, thank you. You can leave and go back to the surfing. That's fantastic. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, Paul. Bye, guys. Bye. Pleasure. Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you, Bobbi. Bye-bye.
Great. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for joining us on XpertTalx. We look forward to the next one. We look forward to having your feedback, and we'll speak to you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.